Well, our guest today is Pastor Keith Anderson from Upper Dublin Lutheran Church, and he's also the author, let me make sure I get these right, The Digital Cathedral
Right?
and Click to Save, right? The
Yeah.
social media Bible.
Yes.
And you're also engaged with Virginia Theological Seminary, helping to think about and talk about, teach about online media.
Yeah, I'm the associate for digital content at the lifelong learning department at VTS. So yeah, I'm connected to their e-formation program and some other projects. I was on a lot of Zoom meetings before the pandemic happened.
So obviously, you started from a pretty high baseline when the pandemic slowed us all down. So I'm just curious. First of all, how did you get started, and then how did your online presences change over the last 10 months?
Yeah. Um, well, yeah, as you said, I've been kind of writing about, speaking about, practicing digital ministry in one way or another for like 10 years. And, going all around the country, writing, encouraging people to pick up these tools. And then the pandemic hits, and well, we have no choice. So I guess we're going to do this. So um, I wonder if people have made more progress in the last 10 months than they've made in the last 10 years when it comes to digital ministry. But it's been really great to see because it comes out of this place of wanting to care for and support our people. So how do we proclaim the gospel? How do we care for those in our charge? How do we serve our neighbors? So we're finding new ways to do that. When the pandemic hit, we were probably not unlike a lot of churches with what we had. We had a website that was not that easy, which I had made, but was not that easy to manage. And, we had Facebook page was our main social media account, and we weren't live streaming anything at all. So we were doing some digital things, but not the way we are now. So when the pandemic hit, my first response was, let's build a new website because we just had this feeling like we're going to need a website to put all the things we're creating, all the content, and we're going to need one that more people can edit. So we created a Squarespace website, and I've been really happy with that. That's kind of like a drag and drop type thing, like a Weebly or Squarespace. I guess is the two that I'm familiar with, and we've been very, very happy with that. And I was kind of worried because sometimes I make the answer to a lot of things. There's a technology solution to this. It's like, what do we do in the face of this pandemic? We make a website. That's like Keith's answer to everything. But we did, and it's really borne out to be so important because we're creating all this worship content and formation content, and just this week our band is now recording video for our worship, and which we had never had before. So we created a web page for all of their worship videos. So now we have like a library, and members can go in and look up their favorite song, or people who are checking out the church can play the band music just to get a feel for what we do.
So how did your worship start out? What were you on Zoom or
Yeah.
Facebook?
We were on Zoom. So, like everybody else, everything shut down and we had a few days to figure out what to do. So we created a Zoom webinar format for worship. And it was just me and my, at the time, field ed student, and Lindsay Bates from Princeton Seminary. And I was in my office and she was at home, and we put together slides, and gosh, I'm not even sure what we were pulling in at the time, for music and stuff, just really early on. I guess we were pulling some YouTube videos off for music. And we did that for quite some time. And then we moved into doing Zoom in the sanctuary, one person in the balcony, one person up front, or one person in the sunroom. And we were doing it that way talking into our laptops. And then we had some volunteers who, thank goodness, kind of self-appointed themselves to figure out this live streaming, which, is really over my head. So I know enough to follow along just about, but they took, we had like a handy cam, and they hooked that into a computer and using OBS, which is a, free software. And basically taught themselves how to do this. And then once we got to a level of proficiency, we bought a um, was it the point, tilt, and zoom?
Pan, tilt, zoom. Yeah.
Yeah, PTZ camera, which we got, and then we installed that on the balcony, and that's what we use. So we use the PTZ camera fed into. There's two computers, one that's got the slides as an input, and then one that's managing the audio and the scenes on OBS. Yeah, and that's what we do every Sunday. And then we have our band records things, or our music director records things on organ or hymns, or things with the choir, putting all these different parts together in GarageBands and editing them up.
Okay. So you're using a lot of recorded content, so you don't need as many people in the space when you're doing worship.
Yeah, it's all the music's recorded because of course we're worried about singing. So in front of the camera on a Sunday, we have 3 or 4 people, and in the balcony there's 2 or 3 people, and that's all.
That sounds reasonably safe.
Yeah. I mean, it's as safe as we can make it at this point.
Do you find that a lot more comfortable than when you were doing things from home or from 2 locations?
The big the important piece there for us is that people really get a sense of the sanctuary, and that was really missing on our Zoom. So when we moved Zoom into the sanctuary, which I don't know why it took so long to do, maybe because I didn't have an Ethernet cable long enough to make sure I had a good signal, but once we got in there, that helped a lot, and now people can get a feel for the sanctuary. So that's really the most important thing. We've always kind of erred on the side of doing it live because we wanted to try to keep some interactive feel to it between the people who were on it. And then with the Zoom and YouTube chats, which is now just on YouTube, but with the YouTube chat that we could respond to people, and we take prayer requests and then, pray for them in real time during the service.
So have you found a designated person to watch the chat during worship so you don't have to?
We're all actually watching the chat on our phones during worship. There's one designated person that pulls all the prayers together from the chat at the end of the prayers of the people. So we take turns doing that because you're scribbling through the whole service to make sure you've got everybody, and then that becomes really my prayer. That becomes my prayer list for the week. So we do take turns on that, but otherwise we're all interacting with everybody on our phones.
Remember the days when we used to tell people to turn their phones off in church?
Yes. Well, yes. I was never one of those. I just want to go on record, but I do remember the days.
Well, I think that probably should be gone now.
Yeah. Well, we're asking people to give by text also, give by text or give online. And, that'll be part of our life moving forward too.
Yeah. So one of the things that's come up in our group of communicators and worship folks and pastors has been thinking about the tension. There's a tension between what works in a live in-person format and what people are conditioned, to see on a screen. Mm-hmm. And also, how have you handled that tension in putting together what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it is very strange to be, we have little tape marks on the carpet in the church about where you're supposed to stand because the camera is aligned to those places. So you really need to be in those places. Or you're trying to awkwardly get the camera to move to find you. So there is kind of an element of it that's really strange because you're kind of doing it for the camera. I remember when we were doing Christmas decorations, we decorated in ways that we never have before because the camera is up high, so it catches the area behind the altar. So we kind of put poinsettias behind the altar on the credence table, like in a way that we just hadn't before, and where the Christmas tree goes to get into the shot, or where the Paschal candle or the altar, the Advent wreath, all those things. So it's that bit's a little awkward. And we've talked about that because, one of our team members will say, I'm used to the pastor kind of getting up and moving, so like if you're moving between shots, you're getting off your stool at the beginning and moving to the pulpit, and we see that, that's fine. Or, having somebody light the candles, in the background while we're welcoming people, like, yeah, that's just a normal part of church. In fact, that could be even a better experience than having everything be so set. But I have the experience of, I think I said on a Sunday, it's like, feels like this combination of hosting a morning show, like where you're doing the host chat, and a telethon and something else.
So I'm curious if you've tracked, um, well, both how many people watch your live streams, and also, do you have a sense of how long people watch? Do they watch the whole thing? Do they pop in and out? Do they watch recordings later?
That's a great question. So, one thing I discovered in this process was this YouTube app called YouTube Studio. So, like, I have the regular YouTube app, but there's a YouTube Studio app, and that gives you more details on your videos and how many times it was watched and when it was watched.
Hmm.
And maybe that's available on YouTube, but I just haven't found it in like the most easiest way to access that. So you can click on it and it'll show me like how many times it was viewed, and it'll give like when it was viewed. So we do have people that go back and watch later, and this gives me a snapshot of like how many people watch. So like last week it had 340 views. Um, we're kind of in the low 300s, high 200s for that, and Christmas Eve was, of course, really big.
Yeah.
It was kind of cool on Christmas Eve because we did a one video at 4 o'clock, live at 4. That was it, and then it just was available to everybody else, and I could watch during Christmas Eve night because I would normally be working anyway, and and I could see the bars were coming, so I could see when people were watching over the course of the evening, and then even into the next morning. So it's YT Studio is a really good thing. So we've been staying pretty strong and pretty steady with the current setup we've got.
So have you found a lot of folks who are not local tuning
Yeah,
in?
yeah, we do. In fact, this is not a regular thing, but we had a member's daughter and her husband who are in South Africa at the moment, and they tuned in on Christmas Eve. So it's like, okay, it's officially international. Um, but
Right.
we have a contingent from North Carolina every Sunday who are members of ours who moved, retired, or moved for work. So we always have the North Carolinians with us. And so people do check in from different places. North Carolina, outside of Pennsylvania, is the biggest one. And then we have other people from other states in the Midwest or on the East Coast. So that's been fun. And this past Sunday, we had a newish member gathering on Zoom for people who joined during the pandemic or were here before the pandemic, didn't get a chance to join, people who are living in North Carolina who used to be members but worship with us every Sunday. So we had this really cool mix of people on Sunday kind of hearing about how are you connected to us? How did you find us? Why did you stay? And then, so there's all that piece. And then also, we were able to, our financial secretary was actually able to do an analysis of giving based on giving outside of Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
So she was able to put together a report about, how many states were represented in terms of giving to the church, which was kind of neat to see too. I mean, I talked to one of our senior members today, and she was talking about how great it is to be able to watch. She loves coming to church, but for people who can't get to church, how good that is, or members who are away for the Sunday who still are able to watch and then be able just, we're just doing it anyway. So, I mean, this is the whole thing with social media, right? You're doing it anyway. You're creating this content anyway, and all you're doing is making it as widely available as possible. So it is a pretty cool thing, and it's been great to see churches and ministry leaders experiencing that and reflecting on that.
So churches, if we think about it, we're creating content all the time, although most of it has historically been in person, in groups. What is your ideas about the kind of content that churches could be adding beyond worship?
Yeah. So different things. I would say that if you're doing any kind of educational or formational programming for adults, you should be recording that. So if you're doing it on Zoom, record it, save it, post it. We've done some of that this year, which has been really positive. And my kind of vision for that is we create sort of a Netflix of adult faith formation, which is not a new idea, but like you could go on our website onto online resources and find anything. You could pull it up, and we've got stuff there on living in an Airstream for a year and the faith lessons from that. We've got Emily Scott's book, For All Who Hunger, book groups that we've done, and just, even book groups we're doing. We're just putting all of the material available on the website about the book group. So it's easier for our people to access, but then other people could just go in and adopt it for their own settings. So those things, anything like that. We did a series of like 6 videos called Walks in Faith, where we asked members of the church to kind of record themselves talking about their faith. And that was a cool quarantine project. I hope we can do more of those in the future. I mentioned the band music. The band's never recorded itself in video to share. We created a page for that. And which was kind of like a latter aha moment. They've been doing it for months and finally realized, oh, right, now we have all this we could share. So, and as as the contents become available, we're just figuring out the best way to put it out on the website. You could do, some podcasts are much more involved, but podcasts are good quarantine things. You could do just a 1 or 2 minute, reflection. A lot of pastors do some Facebook Lives, or Katie Churchwell, who I follow, she does something called pop-up prayer. Mm-hmm. So just does like a Facebook Live pop-up prayer every evening, and that's very cool. So, it doesn't have to be very elaborate. You don't have to have a library of things to start. You just start collecting and give 2 bits of content and put them together, and you're kind of off, and then it kind of lets you imagine what else it could be.
Yeah. So with items like your young adult education or adult education Bible study, do you put just a presentation, or do you record all the back and forth and discussion?
Yeah, good question. So when we've done them on Zoom, the whole recording is there because it's primarily a presentation or a conversation with me with some questions I field for us from the comments. So that comes across pretty well. I think what I've thought about in relation to your question is what happens when you have an adult forum here in the building and you want to do a recording, but a lot of it is questions and then conversation. It's not really very fun to listen at all to overhear a conversation that happened a few days ago. So what my vision for that, the place I want to get us to on that is that, if we have a guest speaker come in, we'll do the adult forum. At this point now, what I want to do is set up that room so that people could Zoom in. So you could be in Zoom or in person, it would be a good experience. So if you're Zooming in live, that's like a different thing than listening to this conversation. But I also have this dream of creating a podcast project around that called, we're going to call it 3 Questions. And so we'll ask 3 questions of each presenter that comes in on an audio recording and then post it as a podcast. So it's like a 10-minute, it's like a 10-minute synopsis. That's designed to be listened to like on a podcast, as opposed to you're just overhearing a recording of something that happened.
Yeah, that discussion is wonderful in real time, but sometimes it's really hard to follow.
It's painful. Like usually it's just you can't even hear what people are asking, and it's so you can't hear the question that the presenter is responding to. Yeah.
So have you looked forward to the day? I think it's going to be a while till everybody feels comfortable coming back into church. Mm-hmm. There will be a day, hopefully not too far off in the future, when some people at least will be able to gather for worship, and you'll still want to engage folks who are watching at home,
Yeah.
and maybe even involve them the way you're involving people over recordings now. Have you
Mhm.
thought about how that's going to look?
Yeah. We so to your previous question about kind of recording and like listening in, that's also a danger with worship. Like if you just put up a camera and let it roll during worship, the worship as we were doing it before the pandemic is really designed primarily for people who are there, right? And that's the best experience. It's not the best experience just to roll a camera and live stream and people look in at what's happening. So like as we're doing the live stream now, the live stream is good because it's all designed around people watching from home. If you were to sit in a pew right now and watch our live stream, it would be so boring because there are these big spaces between when things happen. And we're up and down and we're sitting and we're masking on and masking off. So neither would work in either direction, right? So we need to find a hybrid where we have slides that we do have screens, so we have slides that we could show, but that also are formatted well enough to show during a live stream so that people at home could see the slides. So we've got slides here and there. And with live, if we, whenever we can have live music, we could zoom in on the bands, and I think we'll get a pretty good music. So that's an important question, and I think one that a lot of churches aren't thinking about yet. So we created this system. How does it work for both in person and live stream? Um, so we still have to think through some of those things, but that's like a high priority that it has to work for both audiences.
Do you think it might even be a positive to be able to engage like your folks in North Carolina or South Africa, or shut-ins who are not normally able to come to church but can watch online, to have a way of inviting them to participate to the live audience?
Yeah. The YouTube chat has worked out really well for us, like in the Zoom chat before that. And I know there are some churches who have, like digital ministers who, like now these might be more evangelical type churches than places I've seen it. Although, like Jim Keat at Riverside Church has a role in this, but on Sunday mornings, there's somebody tending to the live chat that's happening and people who are engaged online. So like right now, there are three of us are like chatting back to people on YouTube. We might not be able to do that when there's more people, in the sanctuary. We may or maybe we will, maybe we won't. But there should be somebody who is like the digital minister for the day, just like you have an usher and a greeter and all of that stuff. Somebody who would be willing to welcome people on the chat, respond. Could they send up prayer requests from the chat so when we get to our sharing time, we can name those things. Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't, again, you can do it on your phone, so it doesn't have to be too complex.
Yeah. So, do you think there's anything you've learned from this digital worship or teaching experience that you see translating back into in person and perhaps shifting that a little bit?
I mean, I guess, when I wrote, I've written these books, but particularly with Digital Cathedral, which was like, came out almost 6 years ago and got very relevant very fast last year. That, my conviction about digital media or in digital ministry is that if we let it, it can draw us out beyond our walls. And when we put ourselves out in digital spaces or local gathering spaces, it changes the way that we understand our ministry. It changes the way that we think about who our neighbors are, about who belongs, about who we're connected to. And so it shapes us and it shapes our congregation. And then hopefully it shapes, our community. So, this taste now that everybody's gotten about, we've got these people joining us or we've connected with other people, even if it is like somebody's mom, which is like my mom included, even if it's somebody's adult kid in South Africa that wants to worship on Christmas Eve, don't discount that.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's those things, or only, or for the members who are part of your church, um, it would be such a tragedy to leave that behind. now we're back, we're fine, we're good, and to leave the learning and the possibilities of this behind. Like, people have to really, we're shifting gears again. We've shifted gears like 6 times through all this. Now we're in the shifting gears of, we've got these people who we're connected to. How do we stay connected? And
Yeah.
how do we take what we've learned intentionally and roll it into what we're going to do in the future?
Great. Yeah, I think we really did jump a number of years in a couple of months
We did. We did.
there. I won't speculate as to which years we jumped, but we did a lot of churches move forward. What have you observed in, noodling around at what our SEPA colleagues, but other folks around the church are doing?
Everybody is doing something different, which is cool. And I try to put a check on my jealousy when I see things that I think are really neat. And just think, that's how they're doing it. And so if I can check that a little bit, everybody's doing something different. So there's really no right way to do it. And there's really even no best way to do it, because it's also contextual. I've been really inspired by seeing everybody do what they're doing. And like, digital ministry is all fits and starts and learning out loud, and this worked and this didn't work. Okay, we'll move to this, and we'll try this. And that's really what it's about. So people have been willing to do all those things because their people need it. And that's really the heart of ministry. So when I look at this, I see the heart of ministry in what people are doing in whatever way that they're able to do it.
Yeah, I've been really impressed with the creativity and the variety of what folks are doing. And, I think that's probably been a good challenge, even though it's been a challenge,
Mm-hmm.
to come out of this COVID pandemic time.
Yeah, we've learned to do things differently. We've had to do different things entirely. We can never say we've never done it that way before, because we're coming up on a year and we will have done everything differently. Every single thing for this whole year, we will have done differently in some way. So, we just can't go back to say, well, this is just what we do, because of that. And we discovered some really great gifts of things that will continue after COVID's all done. New traditions, new ideas, new experiences. So it's like everybody, it's like, it was tough and it's taken a while, and lots of ups and downs, but we've hit on some things that I think, wow, we're going to keep doing these. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It seems like we've had 10 months now of nobody can say we never did it that way before.
Not one thing, everything. Every single thing. I just would be grateful to have one thing not have to be different. But we're doing Ashes to Go for Ash Wednesday, which we've done at train stations in the past, so we know how to do that. But we're doing that here at church, and do you need a swab? A swab, and like, how does it work? How do you stay safe doing that? And rethinking. We did a virtual Christmas pageant, like a lot of people, and that was incredibly fun. And some said, this is our best Christmas pageant, because there are families at home together doing these, parts of the story. And we're going to do something like that for Easter. So it's really unlocked a lot of imagination and creativity for us.
So it sounds like you've had a lot of different roles yourself, and your team have had a lot of different roles. Have you looked at long run how this shift to digital and eventually hybrid ministry will impact your staffing and your budget?
Yeah, we already over the kind of early in the pandemic, because we're doing a transition process in a pandemic. So because why not? So early on, like middle of last year, sort of was becoming clear that to support our mission and ministry, we needed to start reorganizing our office staffing, our administrative staffing. So we're in the process of doing that. We brought on a business manager, and we said, well, we'll kind of fill out the other roles as 2021 rolls on, And between that point, late summer, and like a month ago, really became clear that one of those positions, which we kind of imagined as like a tech assistant, because so much is digital for us now, that really needs to be a communications position. So we're in the process of drafting a job description for, and we'll post a part-time communications role, which will cover, not doing the live stream per se, but slides, Office and Outlook, the website, social media, the weekly emails, like all of that, and supporting the staff in that. So that really became crystal clear to me, because I've been the one doing the communications for the last year. I've been doing all the weekly emails for almost a year, and other things in the website, with some help with the website and social media as I'm able to get to it. So that will be a priority for us, and hopefully early this year we'll get that done. So we're so that to me, in my mind, for years, it's always seemed to me that the church administrative life of the church, which has been very kind of secretarial oriented and print oriented, was going to move toward being much more digitally oriented and communications oriented. And we were already sort of heading in that direction, but this certainly accelerated that, I think, for all of us. I've talked with like youth ministers who are now the communications or linchpins on the staff, because they know how to do digital things. So whoever you were on the staff that could do something digital, you were automatically recruited into a different kind of role, or maybe you were hired on to fill a role for
Right.
some people.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, in terms of the equipment and all of this, how have you justified the investment?
Well, we've been lucky that, well, so I mean, I think I could think about that in a couple ways. We're lucky with the live streaming that we had a lot of things in place already. So ultimately, all we had to do was borrow a computer from somewhere else in the building that wasn't being used because of quarantine, COVID, and we ultimately bought this $2,500 PTZ camera, but that's really it. That's the only expense for us. Whereas I know like my mom's church is spending like, 30 grand, because they had almost no technology in their sanctuary. Maybe they had like the lavalier mics. So a lot of churches are putting tens of thousands of dollars into their locations. So we were lucky with that. But I mean, ultimately, you want to be in that place where you've got a soundboard, you have reliable equipment. I will say that in terms of other investments we've made, which we made in 2019 pre-pandemic, which we were fortunate about, was that we started working with a company here in Ambler called Mantis Computer that we really love, and they've been providing tech support. They helped us refresh our computers so we didn't have to buy new computers, and they've been working away on projects for us. We've moved to Office 365 and Outlook, so a cloud-based office environment. We did that in 2019, and we were starting to move away from desktops to laptops for some of our staff, because a lot of we have a good bit of like very part-time staff who generally work remotely. So we had some of that in place, which was helpful. We moved to so that was a significant investment and has really paid off for us. We changed church databases. We moved from Shepherd Staff to a database called Breeze, which is all cloud-based and which we love. We're very, very, very happy with it. And so it's all in the cloud and secure, backed up. And we've been using it for over a year and have had great success with it. It's got online giving built into it. So our online giving was better. We got everybody migrated from Shepherd Staff or from Simply Giving to Breeze, which took quite some time, but thank God we did it. So we've made other types of digital investments, most of them pre-pandemic, which we were very lucky about. And that's made a big difference in how we do our work. We're also getting used to SharePoints and one drives, and like we're still getting used to those things, but you know, and however you do it, enabling people to collaborate, remotely or even in the same document in the same office is a big help.
Yeah. Yeah, you said something earlier that I found really interesting. Checking your jealousy. Not looking at what others have done and feeling bad about what you're doing because it's not at that particular level. And I know we have a lot of churches still who are probably at very rudimentary level, maybe a phone in the sanctuary or something like that. What would you say to folks who are in that situation and are kind of anxious about moving to the next step?
Um, I guess I'd say like, thank God, thank God for you for doing what you're doing, and your congregation better than anybody, and what the needs are of the congregation, and what the possibilities and the limitations are. So thanks, so thank you should really appreciate what you're doing because we don't often take the time to do that. And if
Yeah.
somebody needs to say that, then I'll say that. So thank you. Um, in terms of next steps, there's a lot of stuff online there's more than any of us could consume online with webinars and blog posts and advice. And I'm on the Churches That Live Stream Facebook page or group, and it's just like an endless amount of things I don't understand. So, I mean, reaching out to just seeing what other local churches do, or connecting with Bob in the Synod, and just sort of saying, well, I wonder how they do that, or I wonder if we could do that, whether it's in the context of worship or some other way. And part of this work is there's a lot of generosity involved because we're all figuring it out as we go. So I guess just don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask somebody, what's working for them, and why and how. We're all learning from each other, and you don't have to, you don't have to do it all at once. We didn't do it all at once. We've got a lot of capabilities here, and it still took us like 6 months, more than 6 months to kind of get up and running to where we are now, where we feel like we are where we want to be. So it does take some time.
So you mentioned Ashes to Go as well, and I've been reading there are some, I guess, ecumenical groups that are talking about not having people do in-person ashes as sort of their best practice recommendation. But I know that Lutherans mostly are not going to follow that.
Yeah.
So you're thinking of doing an outdoor Ashes to Go for the congregation?
Yeah, that's what we're thinking. People can drive up right here to the front of the church. So the idea is, and it's a little way, every day and every week is different, but what we're planning for at the moment would be to have people drive in. I've got purple gloves for Lent, and we got long swabs. So they look like a coronavirus testing facility. But the way that we're kind of currently approaching it is that people would drive in, stay in their car, roll down their window. I would take a swab, and one swab per person, and do the ashes with the swab, do it on their forehead, bless them. And then, often with Ashes to Go, like if you're at a train station or somewhere like that, you would sometimes have something you could hand out to people, like a pamphlet about Lent, about their church. And we, we're going to do something like that. Recently, somebody recommended a really good website called Vibrant Church Communications, which is, I think, just one Presbyterian pastor that has a really great sense of theology and design. And we're going to hand out a booklet on Lenten micro practices to everybody as they come through. And then I think our Christian Ed folks are working on Lenten bags for different age groups.
Hmm. Yeah, Lent's really a busy time of year
Yeah.
for the church. Have you thought about how the traditional midweek service and then Sunday service rotation might look?
Yeah, we mainly been focused on the, I guess, worship side of things. so far. I mean, so we're not going to do a midweek service, but we are going to do a 1 year COVID service. So I think the 1 year anniversary of the lockdown is going to be very difficult because it's like a year. We've been doing this for a year, and all the news articles that are gonna, I mean, it's going to be tough. So we're building stuff around that so that people could come and write prayers on ribbons and tie them here at the front of the church. And we're going to do a Wednesday evening service to commemorate it. I think we're going to get a tree for our memorial garden and put that in. So like that's like the second or third week of Lent. So that's we're trying to kind of build out around
Mm-hmm.
that thus far. And we've got some ideas for encouraging people to bake their own bread for Monday, Thursday, and Easter for Holy Week, and getting a simple recipe out to people for that. So we're trying to kind of think about ways to engage with people and sort of the tactile parts of Holy Week, which is such a wonderful and important thing, and we risk missing out on. We might have some special, adult ed programming, but I'm not sure about that yet.
Yeah, it was Holy Week last year was very early into this, so
Yes.
we were all scrambling.
Yeah.
What did you learn from doing digital Holy Week last year?
Well, boy, it was so different because the Friday night we do a tenebrae service, and thinking like, okay, so read, sing, or read video, and like, what are we going to do? What are we going to show? And then we do this very traditional here. Well, I mean, traditional for like the last, 10 or 15 years. There's been like a teen crucifixion drama at the end, and I had people send me pictures so I could put that to music and try to create some sort of replica of that. And you know, I don't know that we're going to try anything. Try it. Maybe we'll show that again this year. I don't know what we'll do, but you know, it did force us. Like I remember that experience in particular did force us to look for inspiration in different places, because when you have 7 slots of things you've got to fill, and you don't have all of the usual things at your disposal, what are you going to do? I used a piece of artwork I'd found on a trip to Savannah, a poem by David White, who I've kind of encountered during the pandemic, who's a wonderful video of his that he shared. So we definitely had to go looking for more inspiration, and and encouraging people to do things at their homes, like create altars at home. I remember, like, for the first Easter was the first time we did online communion. So to kind of set a sacred space in their homes, I invited everybody to create like a little altar, which they kind of kept through Holy Week. So like, what are the what things do translate to us over a screen, as best possible, as best they can, and what things don't, and how do you try to account for those things with people at home?
Yeah, that's the challenge we're all struggling with these
Yeah,
days.
right, right. It's like that. Your questions about, like, you're thinking about how does this come across online versus in person, and overhearing conversations, and it's the same idea. It's like, well, it's not going to work for me to have you watch me wash my feet in some way, or like, it's like, or why not let other people to wash their feet, wash their hands, wash each other's feet or hands,
Hmm.
so, or bake bread, preferably not at the same time.
But you could bake bread during church. That would
Oh
work.
yeah, I think I think some people are doing that now, and I mean, how cool is that? I think that's
Yeah,
pretty cool. Yeah.
and they have their coffee with them the whole time.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. I think I mean, people brought coffee into the sanctuary here anyway, but yeah, you can be cozy at home, baking your bread, drinking your coffee. And yeah, I mean, I guess we seem to be it was definitely, we seem to be in a good place with it. I mean, we've all had to adapt way more than we thought we would. And, now we're all looking at these variants and the vaccines and this kind of race here. And, I think we just know we're in it for a while, and people, we're just embracing what is possible, instead of, you know, being so frustrated by what is not.
Yeah. Well, it It is what it is, so we might as
It
well
is what
make
it
the
is.
most of it.
That's right. Yeah.
Worrying about it or fretting is not going to change it. It's
Yeah.
or get the vaccines here any faster.
Right.
So
Doesn't mean that we won't, doesn't mean that we won't rage against it, but I think we've found some sort of, at least in the church, at church, some sort of sense of calm and rhythm about this time. And, you know, when we hope to do a Easter sunrise service outside and, like, which we haven't done before, but we're going to do this year because we can be out, it's April 1st. So or it's early April. So we'll see what the weather's like, but I think we'll do it. We'll do it because we need to be together and we can be outside. So as long
yeah.
as it's still safe. Yeah.
Any other words of wisdom you want to share that I didn't ask you about?
I mean, no, I don't think so. Just, thanks to everybody for all you're doing. It may not feel like enough, but it is enough. It's more than enough. And you start thinking now about, how you're going to transition back. And we've been a kind of a digital church, and now we're going to be a hybrid church. And we were in very small ways before the pandemic, maybe, but we're going to be a hybrid church for a while. So get to thinking about what does it mean for us to be a hybrid church and be inclusive of people who are in person and people who are virtual, and how we keep those relationships going. That to me is the next question that we should be asking, and I think we should be asking it now for whenever that time comes. And we're much more ready now, but like it'll be going. I mean, there's going to be so much longing to go back to the way it was that we just don't want to toss everything that we've done and learned. Because yeah, just like everyone, I want to go back to that too, but we've got to, continue to be the church in these spaces.
Yeah. One thing I hope we really don't lose is that sense of our homes being sacred space.
Yeah. That's a great point. Absolutely. Yeah. The ways that, yeah, I mean, in addition to homes becoming schools and other things, it has become a sacred space. Like, yeah, I think I forget when it was, maybe it was before Christmas. There was a family, and there were two windows on either side of like it was a fireplace or a TV or something. But then they did the windows like the stained glass at church. We have these two long, thin windows on either side of the cross area up front. And it was like, we're ready for Christmas. And I was like, right.
Nice.
Sacred space at home. I think you're absolutely right about that. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much, Keith, for sharing your time and your expertise with us, and hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah. Sounds good. Thanks, Bob.